Hi everybody, I'm Helen and welcome to Your Coach Online. This module is about self-compassion. So what is self-compassion? Well, I think about self-compassion as it's a way of making friends with yourself. So self-compassion is the ability to recognize our own humanity, or the fact that each of us is imperfect and each of us experiences pain. It involves developing a deep understanding of who we are and accepting the parts of ourselves we often have difficulty in accepting. And from a place of understanding and acceptance, we can learn to grow and change. What self-compassion is not is self-indulgence. So self-indulgence often it is part of perhaps, not facing up to facts and wanting to avoid difficult emotions or difficult experiences, and maybe throwing yourself on the couch and eating bucket loads of ice cream. And although that might be appropriate at times, that's self-indulgence and not really self-compassion. It's also, self-compassion is also not self-pity. Self-pity is very much becoming sort of wrapped up in your own problems and believing that you're the only one in the world that is suffering. And it's not related to self-esteem as such, although there's nothing wrong with self-esteem and a good sense of self-worth. But that's not what self-compassion is about. It really simply is just saying to yourself that, yes, it's very difficult what I'm going through right now, but it's normal and natural for human beings to struggle at times. And, you are not alone in this experience. What they've found is that people who are more self-compassionate have been shown to have fewer depressive symptoms, less negative emotion, and more positive emotion. It has been shown to improve mental health, well-being, and resilience in people who practice self-compassion. Self-compassion can result in behavior that's conducive to healing and well-being, as opposed to behavior that might further contribute to negative feelings about yourself. So I'm not sure if you've ever had the experience of maybe being on a diet and, you have got all these foods that are restricted and you're trying to be really good. And then you break your diet by having a cookie or maybe two. And then you feel so guilty and ashamed that your first instinct is to remove these uncomfortable feelings of guilt and shame. And often we do that by seeking a comfort, which often ends up in us eating the rest of the packet of biscuits. So by having self-compassion and just understanding that, well, we've had a cookie, and not judging ourselves for having a cookie, we are less likely to experience these difficult feelings of shame or guilt, which is another real difficult emotion to experience. So practicing self-compassion can actually help us make better decisions. And I love this quote: you can't beat yourself into a better version of yourself. So practicing self-compassion, you're going to motivate yourself into the appropriate behaviors you really want to be experiencing. And it's a bit like, you can't beat a puppy into being a better puppy. Puppies respond to kindness and love and compassion. And so the idea is that we treat ourselves like this, so we can actually then start to experience growth from a place of acceptance. So self-compassion is also about acceptance. So it's about accepting that things just are as they are. And it might be accepting, for example, that you just ate a cookie and not judging yourself or not making any more of a deal of it than that. I'm using diets, but you can think of other things that might be applying to you in your specific circumstance. So what is acceptance? Acceptance is simply about acknowledging what is. And I really like this. It's raining. I don't like rain. I wish it wasn't raining. My day would be so much better if it wasn't raining. My day is ruined. Every day is like this. So this unwillingness to accept what is. And actually, if you accept that it's raining, then you can simply make better decisions or provisions based on what is actually true. This is a rather challenging statement, but for those of you that don't know Pema Chodron, she's a Buddhist monk, and she has a habit of clearly saying exactly how she feels. And I love this quote: rather than letting our negativity get the better of us, we could acknowledge that right now we feel like a piece of shit and not be squeamish about taking a good look. So it's actually embracing how we feel and doing it with kindness and not avoiding how we feel. Often when we want to avoid negative feelings, or we want to avoid some of the difficult emotions that we experience in life, we often turn to things like drugs or alcohol or food or some other way of distracting ourselves, because we can't bear the thought of just sitting with this discomfort. And so what she's suggesting is that actually just sit with it and take a good look, but do it with kindness and do it with compassion. So one of the techniques I like to use as a way of supporting self-compassion is noticing. It's a technique called notice, label, and accept. And I've made a short video on this also, so you can have a look at that if you just want to see the highlights. But this is about practicing being aware when you're experiencing difficult emotion. And the idea is that the first thing you do is notice the emotion that you're experiencing. So you've kind of got to call yourself out and notice that you might be feeling anger or embarrassment or shame or whatever that emotion is. And the next task is to label the emotion or feeling. So gently investigate and label it. What is this that I'm feeling? Is it fear? Is it embarrassment? Is it shame? Is it sadness? Just label it for what it is. And then the third thing is to accept. So accept and allow the emotion, thought, or feelings just to be there. And accept this with kindness and compassion. So I've got a little bit of an example about this. And I remember one stormy Friday night having to drive home and from Auckland to Pukekohe, and pouring down with rain. And I noticed that I was feeling incredibly tired and frustrated. And I was also feeling quite a bit of fear about getting home safely. And what happened is somebody cut me off in the traffic. And I immediately went into sort of catastrophizing, being very angry, shouting at the person, even though, of course, they couldn't hear me because I was in my car. So I went through this process of anger, frustration, doing the fingers at them, for example. And then all of a sudden I stopped and I thought, whoa, that was completely unnecessary, Helen. And I sort of just took a step back and I thought, I judged myself and thought, wow, that wasn't very mindful of you. And then I thought, oh, you know what? I'm just tired and I just want to get home safe. And it's been a really long, hard week. And actually, I'm frightened. I'm frightened of this weather. It's awful. I can hardly see where I'm going. And actually, if I just take it a little bit easy, I'm much more likely to get home safely and in one piece. And there's no point me carrying on being angry because this person is long gone. And the only person that has to live with this anger for the next hour for this journey home is me, actually. So by just showing myself a little bit of kindness and compassion, I was able to kind of take myself out of the mood, accept that that's how I was feeling, and then change the outcome. I could have spent the rest of the drive home actually feeling angry and annoyed and frustrated and upset, but I was able to actually just let it go. So it was very, very powerful for me when I first sort of experienced that. So self-compassion is really about giving ourselves the same kindness and care that we would give to a good friend. So it really is about being kind. So I'm going to just share with you a small compassion meditation, a self-compassion meditation. So I want you to get very comfortable and really make sure you're quite grounded in your chair and seat, and have a straight spine, but not stiff. So you can roll your shoulders up, back and low, but just make sure that you're sitting up straight, because often when we do these sorts of meditations, the first thing we do is actually want to go to sleep, which I don't want you to do. And just gently close your eyes. And for this exercise, I want you to bring to mind someone or something that you feel immense and immediate compassion for. Now, I say something because sometimes it's difficult to bring a person to mind. Sometimes it's easy and you have someone that immediately comes to mind. But sometimes actually we can feel instant compassion for a pet. So you might have had a pet in the past, or you've got a current pet that just makes you feel incredibly compassionate. It brings out those feelings of compassion. And I just want you to sit with this feeling. And I want you to sit with this image of this person or pet in front of you. And I want you to just notice how you wish them well. And you really wish that they are free from any pain or suffering. And that you would almost do anything to make sure that they don't experience pain or suffering. And just sit with that for a moment. And then I'd like you to let that image of that person or pet go. And I would like you to bring in the image of yourself in front of you. And I would like you to bring that same feeling of compassion for yourself. And just notice how that feels. And you might say that just as I wish for this other person that I was feeling compassionate for, just like I wish them, I wish myself to be safe and well. And I wish that I be free from suffering. And just holding that for a moment. And just experiencing what that feels like. May I be well. May I be free from suffering. And then when you're ready, just come back to the screen, open your eyes, and just notice how that feels. This is experiencing true self-compassion. So in the Buddhist tradition, when the self-compassion meditation was first experienced or taught, how they taught it is that you could actually extend the self-compassion. So in their tradition, they started with themselves, and to acknowledge that you are suffering, and to extend the same kindness and compassion for yourself as you would a dear friend. Then you would bring into mind compassion for a close friend. But as I said, for us, it's often easier to imagine a person or a pet that we can feel huge compassion for first, get into that feeling, and then bring ourselves in. So we've had to swap it around a little bit. So it's often easier to have compassion for a close friend or loved one or a pet than it is to have compassion for ourselves. So sometimes we need to start with this. And then the idea is that you extend this feeling of compassion out, or they used to call it loving kindness, out to, a stranger or an acquaintance, someone that you don't really know, you're not really that close with. But the idea is actually to bring them into your mind and actually wish the same for them as well. And then, making the circle even bigger, you bring the sense of compassion far and wide. So it involves recognizing that suffering and personal failure is part of the human experience, but the entire human population experiences some form of pain or suffering. So this is actually a technique that you can start to practice and develop. And the idea is that you increase your level of compassion, not only for yourself, but for everyone around you. So what I want you to think about perhaps is next time when you're feeling very hard on yourself and you're wanting to beat yourself up for a behavior or, something that you have done wrong, a mistake, anything that you really start to beat yourself up about, I want you to remember this picture of a puppy. And I want you to think about, how can I treat myself with the same amount of kindness and compassion that I would give to a person, a puppy, or a pet that I love and I instantly feel compassion for. And congratulations, you have now completed the self-compassion module.